Testing.
Good evening, everyone. It's Monday, February 2nd, 2026, and we'll call the regular meeting to order. And if you could please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We are selecting or at least going to attempt to select a chair tonight. So I'm going to start the meeting and we will start with introductions. And if you could lead us off, City Councilor Harriman.
Scott Harriman, City Council Representative to the School Committee.
Donna Gillian, Ward 7.
Megan Hurd, Ward 6.
Linnea Hawkins, Ward 5.
Julia Harper, Ward 4.
Elizabeth Eames, Ward 3.
Janet Bowden, Ward 2.
Phoenix McLaughlin, Ward 1.
Luke Jensen at large.
Jake Langley, Superintendent.
Karen Paquette, Assistant Superintendent.
So in an effort to facilitate the selection of a chair, I put down some notes that we had talked about prior on a slide, and I'm going to share that up here. So the intent of the steps tonight were to give members an opportunity to nominate. Members can nominate themselves. We would also ask if nominees would choose or say out loud if they want to have their name considered or not. And then we would do a round of saying the name of each person if you would choose, and then move to a vote. And a chair would need to be selected by a minimum of 5 affirmative votes. And if votes are insufficient, the committee will repeat the process of up to 2 additional times this evening for a total of 3 rounds if needed. And if no one secures 5 votes tonight, the committee has mentioned that they'd be okay with a pro tem for the evening and then look to nominate a chair next meeting. So with that, are there any members that would like to nominate themselves or someone else? Member Hurd.
Thank you. I nominate Member Bowden as she is the most senior member on our committee.
Member Harper.
I would like to nominate Phoenix McLaughlin for chair.
Nominate myself.
Are there anyone else that wishes to nominate a particular member or nominate themselves? Okay, seeing none, I'll just go down the line. Member Bowden, are you willing to be a candidate in this process?
So I actually prepared a little statement, if that's okay.
Go for it.
So Megan made a really kind post about me online explaining that she would be nominating me and why she was nominating me for chair. So I knew this was coming. I genuinely appreciate the support and the confidence behind it. But if I'm being realistic, I already know there's essentially no chance that this committee will consider me. For me, it's become pretty clear that this nonpartisan board is far more focused on individual party lines than experience or leadership. That reality has been obvious for a while now. I feel like the recent appointments by the mayor only reinforce that dynamic, and those decisions are within his authority, and the committee is now fully seated, but it clearly tipped the balance. It is what it is. Given all that, I think the most logical and responsible thing for me to do is remove my name from consideration and vote for the member that I believe is best suited to lead right now. So I'm not stepping back, but I'm just going to be realistic, and I'm doing what I think is best and supports the committee and our work going forward. So I will remove my name.
The next person nominated was Member McLaughlin. Would you accept and have anything to share?
Yeah, I do accept. Thank you. My interest in being chair in this case is just to try to run the meetings well and coordinate the agendas for the committee work over the course of the year, just to try to make sure that we're addressing the immediate needs of the school system as well as the larger issues that we want to try to address. And that's all. Thank you.
And Member Jensen, would you, I'm assuming, accept your own nomination, and would you like to share anything?
And be probably rude to myself if I didn't. Yeah, I guess there are really just two things I want to focus on. If I'm chairperson, it's really focusing on the organization of the committee itself, as well as the communication amongst ourselves, as well as with the public. Um, you know, I'm not the most experienced teacher in this district by far. My role in this is really as someone who's done well in committees and understands how committees function and how to make sure we get successful results. But to me, it's really about bringing up the voices that need to be heard, making sure that we all have a say in things. I'd like to decentralize a lot of power from the chairperson position. I'd like to see a vice chair position added as well. Have us decide things more in consensus than the really kind of partisan lines, getting those, the way that those votes have been kind of set up. You know, as far as organization, I'd like to see us kind of establish priorities, preferably at the next meeting, not in verses of our goals, but kind of in collaboration with them. Like, for example, at the next meeting, we could have a workshop, we could discuss our priorities. I know like safety has been a pretty big concern for a lot of us, especially those of us knocking on doors recently. And so just establishing what our priorities are as a committee, as committee members, figuring out what we have in common, realizing what we should address first, what is going to need a workshop, what's going to need just to go to the subcommittees first, what's going to be able to be just kind of addressed as a community discussion, not necessarily a vote. But something like that, just, it takes away any, I mean, I'd say it increases transparency with the public because they know what to expect. They know when to give us feedback. They know things like that. It takes away surprises for administration as well as for, school staff and of course the public as well. And allows enough time for feedback so that we get what we need. And having a vice chair position, I think would be helpful too, just someone to help coordinate with the chairperson. Because I think a lot of what the chairperson does is the important stuff is behind the scenes and making sure that we're getting the stuff, like the things that we need discussed are getting discussed. So I think that's a pretty important thing too. So going forward, I'd like to see that happen. So again, that's just more the organization aspect, but the communication is pretty important as well. You know, reaching out to members. So everything isn't put entirely on the superintendent. I think we could do a better job communicating. Also communicating, amongst ourselves in the committee as well as with parents, the public in general. I'd like to see whoever's chairperson, if it's myself, preferably the chair and vice chair, do monthly video updates to the community. Let the public know what they can expect in the next month coming up, what we've discussed in the past month, and maybe some ongoing discussions. And I think that's really going to help with transparency. I think it's extremely important, especially when it comes to talking about the budget. A lot of the budget is just out of our control. A lot of what we do is out of our control. Anyone who's worked in public schools knows that it's really the lack of funding and lawsuits that generally dictate a lot of what can happen in public schools, and that's nationwide. And so having a better communication system, like especially with the budget, if the public knows exactly why we spend the money and what we're required to do, I think it's going to create more public trust. It's going to result in better results when we ask the public to support the budget at the vote. Because what I'm hearing right now and what I heard in the campaign trail is that a lot of people just don't know what's going on. And so communication with the public is extremely important. And so I see the role of the chairperson being the communicator as really almost more important than running the meetings themselves. So, the communication, the organization aspects are really important here. I think the communication or lack thereof is the biggest impediment to the school committee's business. It's the reason we don't have as much trust as we should, and it's the reason we're not able to get as much done as we want to. So I think we really need to hammer that point of communication. So really what I'm offering is just a different way of operating. It's respecting everyone's wishes, kind of having us rule more by consensus than strictly following a system that can often make it partisan. So that's why I'm running, and appreciate you guys listening.
So the next step would be to have the committee vote on the nominees. And so just going to go in order. Go ahead. Yes, actually, is there any public comment that wants to speak to or about either of the nominees for school committee chair? Seeing none. I would like to start with Member McLaughlin because he was just in sequence. So we do it by roll call, which is something we've discussed prior. And we'll start with Member Harriman today, work our way across. So yes or no on
Yes or no on.
no, you'd be voting yes or no on Phoenix this round. And then if there's a need for another, then it would be Member Jensen. Yep. So this should eliminate confusion in that there would be 5 affirmative votes needed. So there'll be 2 opportunities to vote if needed. So if there are 5 affirmative votes for Member McLaughlin, we wouldn't need to do a second vote. And if there are not, we'll do a second vote for Member Jensen. And if we don't have 5 in either of those votes, for some reason, then we would do another round up to 3 this evening.
So, yes.
No.
Yes.
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 It's no, but seeing how it's working out, I'll withdraw my name so we can have a nice unanimous vote.
So you're voting no, but withdrawing? Is that what? Okay. So with both of those steps, I guess, Member McLaughlin, if you wouldn't mind shifting seats as the new chair of the Lewiston School Committee.
Yeah, we have to make a formal vote. So I nominate Phoenix McLaughlin as chairperson of the school committee.
That just
awesome.
happened.
There is no official motion and a second, so it was not. an
Okay,
actual
would
vote.
someone like to motion?
I would like to make a motion to approve Phoenix McLaughlin as the new chair of the 2026 school committee.
I will second that.
Any public comment? Seeing none, we'll move to roll call, starting with Member Harriman.
Yes.
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 Is this unanimous? Member McLaughlin, if you want, would you mind swapping so we can
Yeah.
do the gavel and the timer and all the things? Thank you.
All right, thank you all very much. We'll keep working through the agenda then, and I appreciate it. So agenda item number 4 is the consent agenda. Are there any items that members wish to see set aside from the consent agenda this evening? Okay, seeing none, we will, the consent agenda is adopted and we will move on to agenda item number 5, which is public input. So members of the public may address the school committee for up to 3 minutes on non-agenda items now and on agenda items later. Speakers must adhere to our public comment policy, BEDH, which is available in the back of the room or on the LPS website. These meetings exist to conduct school committee business. The purpose of public comment is to share thoughts on school and educational matters. Committee members and school staff will not reply during this time. Comments must be directed to the chair and be civil. By law, comments may not pertain to specific staff or students, and comments about individuals must be directed privately to the appropriate LPS staff. Student privacy must be maintained. The public comment period is 30 minutes unless extended due to unusual circumstances. Priority goes to Lewiston residents and parents, students, or employees of LPS. Before starting, please state your name, town, or city of residence, and your affiliation to LPS. So if there are any members of the public who wish to speak on non-agenda items now, you're welcome to approach the podium and do so. Okay, I'll take that to mean there's no public comments outside of agenda items today. So we'll move on to agenda item number 6, which is to recognize the mock trial team.
So another layer of success for our mock trial team, even though we have a new advisor, and Principal Radke will do an introduction.
Yes, and I will cede this podium to our new coach, who, in spite of it being his freshman outing as a coach, got him right through to the state championship and is now going to introduce them to us. Robert Shepard.
Oh, my.
I don't want to steal any of his thunder, but he's also a past champion and former student, so he's an alum of all of these things.
That I
Thank you.
am. That I am. It's wicked exciting. I'm very happy to be here tonight with super fun and exciting, when you use the word exciting a lot, news. This past December, mock trial. It's a fun club done at the high school level where every year we get a fictional criminal case from the state organization, and the kids, we gather them up. They have about 6 weeks, give or take, to put together both a prosecution and defense before they go out, and they prepare that before real attorneys who judge them on their skill and say, oh, I really like how you made that legal argument, or oh, I really thought you played the defendant. You were really convincing with those tears coming down your face. Because we have some great actors and actresses over here. It was a very fun season. We played on the way to state championship. We played against both Brunswick and Casco Bay, the 2 finalists from last year. We beat them on the way to play against Bonnie Eagle in the state championship in a very hard fought match. We came out on top, and we now have the opportunity to go to Des Moines, Iowa for the national competition, which is super exciting. It is made up, we have 17 awesome kids, who most of which will have a chance to introduce themselves. I also am accompanied by 4 amazing, spectacular professional coaches, and I will introduce them as soon as the kids are introduced. So I will give them a chance, because these kids have to practice their introductions. Oh my. For every trial they do, the first thing, it's kind of like this, where all the kids come in, they sit in their seats, and they have to wait for the judge to walk in. So then when the judge walks in, they're used to the custom, they all rise, and then they have to talk to the judge, do their pre-trial, and part of that is their introductions. So now I give them an opportunity to all, if they want to stand and introduce themselves one by one. I think they can't all stand at the same time because they'll hide themselves. But we'll start with, Enzo, go for it.
Hello guys, my name is Enzo Gianpaolo, and I'm a senior here at Lewiston High School. You want me to come to the podium?
Yeah. Come on up. Come on.
Yeah, come on up. We want to know who's representing us. You've done a good job. We want to recognize you.
Awesome. Yeah, speaking. Go down.
Oh, hey. Hi, I am Evan Verso, and I'm a senior at Lewiston High School.
Good evening. My name is Zara Bemby. I'm a senior at Lewiston High School.
Right up to the screen, that's fine.
Hello, I'm Noah Comer. I am a sophomore at Lewiston High School.
Hi, my name is Tessa Douglas, and I am a junior at Lewiston High School.
Hello, my name is Abby Martell, and I am a junior at Lewiston High School.
Good afternoon. My name is Lily Bollier, and I'm a senior at Lewiston High School.
Good evening. My name is Shemaima Zinu, and I am a senior at Lewiston High School.
Good evening. I'm Holly Eleniku, and I'm a senior at Lewiston High School.
Good evening. My name is Isabella Caldera, and I'm a junior at Lewiston High School.
Good evening. My name is Anissa Ibrahim, and I'm a sophomore at Lewiston High School.
Hi, my name is Zakia Brimage, and I'm a junior at Lewiston High School.
Hello, I'm a junior, and my name is Zainab Abdi.
Hello, I'm a junior, and my name is Deonta Teague.
And real quick, a few kids who are missing, if you do your math right. Lily Douglas, who is a junior, Kaya Poulin, who is also a junior, and Sebastio Pombo, who is a sophomore as well. They are also members of the team. They couldn't make tonight. The other folks I do want to introduce, if they want to come up, they can. I encourage them to, but we have some lovely volunteer coaches who give up their time. Every week they come and they deal with these rascals and me, and I've been wicked helpful. We have Joan Macri, Andrew Belanger, and Melanie Dorn, as well as Amy Dietrich, who's not here this evening, but they are awesome. And that's our awesome and super duper team.
Yeah. Great job, everyone. Mr. Shepard, do you know how many students are returning this year they competed last year and are returning?
Good question. I'd have to do the math off the top of my head. I want to say we lost about, I think, 5 or 6 seniors last year. So we replaced that number, and I think we added 1 or 2 more. So about, I want to say roughly 10 kids did it previously in last year. And then we have about 6 to 7 new kids this year. I will also say what makes these kids super duper special and super talented this year is in previous years, there's been a class. So they've had a class time during the school day to work on it. This year, for a few different reasons, there wasn't a class. So it was just an outside of school club. So all these kids did a wicked great job putting in the time outside of school, writing, rewriting, writing again, practicing, memorizing. And also big shout out to all their parents and guardians because our practices have to be later because we're competing with sports and other student organizations. So they get their rides and transportation from those parents and guardians. So awesome stuff. I know I'm repeating myself, but I'm just very, very geeked up.
Any other questions from the committee? Okay. Yes, yeah, Member Harper.
I just want to thank all the advisors for supporting these amazing students. And I just want to congratulate all of these students for just making us proud. Like you did such an incredible job and really excited for you to go to the nationals.
Was there anything else to share on the, oh, sorry, Member Glant.
I would just ask when you return to let us know how you did.
That's right.
We will, definitely.
Was there anything else to share on this agenda item, or should we move to the next? Okay. Yeah, congratulations, everyone. You've done an excellent job. And now let's move on to agenda item number 7, which is to receive and potentially vote on the field trip request for the mock trial to attend the national championship in Des Moines, Iowa. Go right ahead.
Lovely. So I'll be very honest with you, as Mr. Langlis mentioned, it's my first time coming up here and asking for the trip approval. I was in the audience last time when Ms. Crowley came up to do Delaware. So if you guys, whatever you guys need, I'm happy to give. So we're asking for approval for the field trip to go to Des Moines, Iowa. It would be from May 5th through May 10th. I don't know if you guys have fun documents to look at, if you're looking at the field trip form. I have also a lovely little micro document if you want it, but I will let you look at the field trip document unless you have questions. Where we're going to go from 5th to 10th. We fly out on Tuesday. From personal experience and hearing from word of mouth, flights currently have been a little dynamic, we'll use the word. So Tuesday is mostly a travel day. We come in Wednesday. Wednesday, we check in. When we check in on Wednesday, we're then going to have some scrimmages against some other teams, which will be very fun, exciting, good practice. Thursday is the first day where we ramp into some workshops where the kids are going to have an opportunity to work with lawyers and judges from across the country and practicing some mock trial stuff. Like they'll have witnesses go and talk about how to be more convincing, and lawyers talk about, oh, how do you write an argument better? Friday is when we finally dive into the first of the official competitions, when we have 2 trials on Friday. Saturday, we'll also have 2 trials, and then we fly back home on Sunday. Questions, thoughts?
Member Bowden.
Thank you. So it looks like 17 students, 2 adults.
Correct.
Is that
And
right?
That
Okay.
is correct. And I'm going to say, I'm going to hand this
Do
out
we
as
know who the other adult is?
So the other adult, and this is where I.
Can you speak into the podium when you?
Yeah.
You can just, you could give the stack and we can pass it around.
That's
No problem.
okay.
So the other adult I'll have is Abigail Ruscher. She's a chemistry teacher at the high school where she's on board. So the 2 of us will be taking these cherubs. I also have mentioned our lovely lawyer coaches. Those guys will be signed up as chaperones once we're on the ground in Des Moines. They might have some professional stuff, so they might be there like, oh, they'll fly in that Thursday or the Friday. But we'll have plenty of folks to keep an eye on the kids. Me and Abby will be attached to the kids at the hip.
I don't mean to make you sweat, but I have a couple more quick questions.
Go. Hit away. This is the short version. I have the long one if you're really excited.
No, so I assume you are staying in hotels.
Correct.
Do those hotels have pools?
They do. It does have a pool. Correct.
Okay, so I see in this that it says there will be no water sports at all.
Correct. They will not be allowed to go in the pool.
Okay, I just want to make sure that all the chairperones are on board with that and the
Yeah.
students understand that.
Yes. and-
Okay.
And it might be breaking news to the students, but it'll be definitely reconfirmed constantly because I checked in with the rules where then it's not the Hilton's not an authorized organization last I checked, and I don't think they do the knee-deep option for in the 1-6 ratio, so it doesn't make sense. No pool, period.
Okay, perfect. And then my last question is regarding the cost of this trip.
Yes,
So it looks like it's $1,400 per student.
yes.
Have you done fundraising to fully fund this, or are you requesting money from us?
Ah, the fun question. So we have started our fundraising, and we're very fortunate to, between very strong fundraising efforts and from carryover funding because of school board funding in the past. Right now, I think if you flip it over, the spitball estimate, I say spitball estimate because I'm hopeful prices will go down as we get closer, is that about $26,000 total. Right now in the bank, we have $20,000. What coming to the school board asking for funding, the amount we'll be looking for is about $6,000. That's the last of our gap they'll be looking to fill. We're still going to continue with our fundraising efforts. We're still going to continue reaching out, particularly to local businesses. All the kids have been told that right now you may see a little blurb about student contribution, where there'd be an expected student contribution for each student to go on the trip. If they bring in a donation from local business, that gets waived, which encourages them to go out into their community and work with their community to help fundraise the collective cost for the trip. But that's what would be a conversation. I understand that this, and correct me if I'm wrong, that's the funding. I'm happy to come back and talk to you guys more about it in whatever avenues is the best way to do so.
Just to chime in, Mr. Shepherd has reached out to me. We've had a discussion or communication back and forth about it. I did ask them to raise everything that they could and then come back. Budget's a lot tighter than some past years because of the reductions we've had to make over the last several years. So I didn't say no per se, but we're not in a position to say we can just take care of this currently financially. And he's been very good as the team to already fundraise and has already gathered some funds.
Correct. And again, we'll take what we can get. We will make it work. That's the motto I try to live by, is we'll make it work.
Anything else? Yeah, Member Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, like, wicked proud of you guys. Congratulations. This is awesome to see. Dominant team, and I love to see it. And congratulations to yourself, Mr. Shepherd, stepping in first year, winning this championship. Basically, Mike Verbal standing in front of us here. So we appreciate you. Yeah, anything that we can do. I mean, my question's really related to the fundraising as well. So yeah, anything that we can do to get the word out to help you guys fundraise as well, I think is really important. You guys are bringing a lot of pride to the school district and the city. So we appreciate everything you guys are doing. Good luck.
Awesome. Thank you. And I guess the only thing I'd echo on that is all good press is good press, where if you guys have a Facebook page and you want us put a little post out for us, we'll take it. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Member Eames.
Maybe you can send us a post so that we can post it.
I can do that. Don't you worry.
That would be one thing. I wanted to also congratulate you on your achievements. My son was part of mock trial, and it was super important for him to have done that, had that experience and learned so much from Joan Macri et al. So, and I guess you were on it too, Luke, as well at that same time. So it's a wonderful program. Obviously, I would support it. I wonder if we can approve it tentatively for whatever, approve the field trip and then come back for the funding, or should we do some kind of motion that says funding to be determined or something like that?
I think that's up to you if you want to direct me to do what we can. I know they've already made some efforts. And I think if it's a problem, I can bring that back to you to say I'm uncomfortable with this expenditure. But I'm certainly happy to look for dollars that might help support the team.
Great, thanks.
Member Jensen.
Move passage based on what Superintendent just said.
Member Bowden.
Before we do that, I'm sorry.
Oh.
Is there a link to donate for this? Is there any sort of
So we don't
GoFundMe or?
Yeah, we didn't set up a GoFundMe because the understanding is sometimes a GoFundMe can be a little wishy-washy in setting it up. We've been telling and we've been able to communicate effectively to all businesses is it sounds old school, but if anyone makes out a check to the high school, I have the direct address. I don't have it on me right this second, but usually made out to LHS mock trial, then mailed to the high school. I've been checking in usually on Wednesdays. I say hi to Heidi. We fill out, see if any checks have come in and process those.
Wonderful. I will second the motion made by Member Jensen then.
Okay. So we do have a motion by Member Jensen and second by Member Bowden. I do have one question. I assume you do fundraising from law firms, including ones that aren't necessarily based in Lewiston, but do cover Maine. So the big ones based in Portland and elsewhere.
Yes, we do. Don't worry. That's Melanie's our secret weapon for that, where she works
Great.
down in Portland. So
Great. Glad to hear it. Okay. Any other questions or comments from the committee? Is there any public comment on this motion? Okay, we are, as mentioned, we are moving to roll call voting. So we are going to do that. And typically it would be the secretary of the committee that calls the roll. Yeah, please do.
We'll start with Member Herman.
Yes.
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 Yes?
Yes.
Yes. So it is unanimous. Have a great trip.
awesome.
We'll be in
Thank you,
touch.
guys.
There's something you need to add?
Just
Yeah.
real quick, before everyone leaves, Joe Macri, who's sitting in the back, who never asked for attention or credit or anything. Joan, thank you so much for all you do for the kids every year, year after year. It's such a blessing. We're very appreciative of you. So thank you.
Okay, moving on to agenda item number 8, which is to receive an update from the superintendent on school impacts from immigration enforcement with timeline. So go ahead.
If you guys want to wait a second, I think there might be a little rustling as.
That's a good point. Yeah, we'll wait a second for that. And superintendent is also pulling up some slides, so it may be a minute. Okay, I think we are good to proceed. So go right ahead.
So to try to guide this update tonight, I did put together some slides. We're certainly working through some unique times, but I'm going to emphasize a few things, at least from my standpoint and our team standpoint. One of the things that we're trying to do very intentionally is to keep school safe and a place for learning and for teaching. And there's a lot of ways to do that. And there's temptations out there that you might want to gravitate towards to not do that, or to be very mindful of all the decisions and the messaging, and really try to stay in the middle of the road on what is a very contentious thing, as you all know. So it's not perfect, but I also want to share some things that are fact-based and some things that have gone on, while knowing that the concerns and these sentiments in our community are very real and ongoing. But I'll go in through this and then I'll spot at the end for questions. So I'll just walk through it. So just some facts that I wanted to share. Obviously, our number one goal is keep kids safe at school. Immigration officers did not operate on any of our school grounds or have not. Immigration enforcement officers did not operate at bus stops, on buses, or at school events to any of our knowledge. We did monitor that very closely over the last couple of weeks and continue to do so. Local, state, national, and international news organizations were reaching out to us for information. I even had a reporter say to me over the phone, "I just need a soundbite," which was really what made me pause early in the process about what information we would push out or not push out. So just understand that there's an interest. I mean, there's a camera to my right. There's an interest in these sound bites and these stories, and I can appreciate that for public consumption. But I also worry it becomes a distraction for school, and school being a safe place for kids. Remote schooling, pre-K through 12th grade. This is my opinion. It's ineffective. It's also very costly. Remote schooling is riddled with inequities, including OT, PT, speech, special ed, 504 accommodations, counseling services, you name the things that we provide on a regular basis that are either not really possible, can't be done as well as we'd like, or not feasible from a remote perspective. We did have a lot of people ask about remote opportunities for kids. I wanted to walk through a timeline because I think it builds context, because I think when things move quickly like they have, there's a lot of news from other places that comes in, news from within that doesn't get out. It goes both ways. But at least from my chair, these are some of the things, and I emphasize some of the things that came up over just the last few weeks. But on January 9th, we had rumors that were growing around an increased presence of immigration enforcement in Maine and in Lewiston that were pending. None of it was confirmed. There was a lot of energy around. I heard this, I heard that. I heard everything from there's going to be about 40 ICE agents in Lewiston to 1,500. I actually had an adult share with me that they heard there's going to be 1,500. And they said this because they had a family member that was working with some agency. And so imagine like the threshold that we're trying to manage, right? And I like to think that I'm typically a conduit for good information, but we have to use strong filters. January 12th, we as a team pulled policy, procedures, and messaging together for an internal review with the sense that this is coming, and we want to be very mindful of what we share and what we do not. I think the worst thing we can do is create additional stress for any parties in the moment. On the 14th, word was pretty actively spreading about the removal of temporary protective status. This came out of Washington, and that was itemized or it stated over multiple different announcements, multiple different countries, many of whom have an affiliation to our demographics. Having said that, the reason I thought this was a good talking point to include in the timeline is there were game changers in information throughout this very short duration of time. For me, and I'm not the person living feeling like I'm at risk of something like ICE enforcement, people were wondering what that meant. And so they were asking others, including people like Jake, because I think maybe Jake knows who might have temporary protective status, who might these folks be, how many of these folks are there? I don't know. And ironically, I think in talking to our community partners, they don't know either. I even reached out to larger offices beyond Lewiston, governmental and law enforcement, and it didn't seem like anyone had a clear answer of who this might impact more directly. 15th, we issued 3 documents publicly. One of them was kind of intended to be internal, but we knew it would get out publicly, so we felt it best to get it out there. But we shared kind of an overview, school procedure, our policies, state statute, and we shared a letter with some protocols. We're just trying to get the word out so that both our staff and parents and students, they all had a sense of what happens if, and we tried to include some scenarios and different strategies that we knew would be shared. That also prompted a number of questions, which we tried to do our best to field. It also prompted a lot of people in our state to reach out to us who were facing the same challenges at their schools and at their events. And so we were happy to work with others while also trying to balance the volume that we had. As I look at January 16th, that note of that, when I say high volume of inquiry and concern, I actually put it in words and then I pulled it back out because it was kind of a tough thing to push on. But this was like post October 23 level of inquiry. We were looking for a statement, we do an interview, do a comment, and we were so busy making sure our grounds were safe that was our priority. On the 19th, we had no school for Martin Luther King Jr. Day. On the 20th to the 21st, we had midterms at the high school. And I noted this because everyone wanted an attendance, like a number soundbite. And I understand why, and I know some numbers were shared, but this is not a typical attendance week. And it's also been quite cold, as you know. So when we looked at the numbers and how they disaggregate, it was really hard to break down when you're missing your largest schools consistent data for attendance, because some kids have school today and some kids don't. Some kids are, right, all the different pieces. And so we had a whole lot of inquiry around, can you just give me a number? How many kids were absent today? Well, I'm going to state what you all know is one of our goals, at least internally, that we're trying to improve our attendance because we have too many kids missing too much school every day. So to share a number and have someone run with that, I think was going to create fear and hysteria. And so we continue to disaggregate and make sure we had the numbers more accurate and a longer duration of data to say this is more like a data set and not a number for midterms or cold weather. On the 21st, we met here. We had a school committee retreat. Things were really ramping up. What are we going to do with some different pieces? We also, Karen and I hosted a meeting with other districts that have, they had their own concerns about the number of people that might be in their community to do immigration enforcement and what that might lead to. I think those conversations were very productive because different communities were seeing different things. But I also got to hear with superintendents sometimes validating and sometimes, at least to their knowledge, invalidating stories right from their own community. Some of them involve schools. There were some stories out there, whether it was social media or news or both, that people were sharing that it didn't happen that way. It wasn't quite like this. And then some things that we didn't know about that had come up. Again, I mentioned numerous other system reaching out about procedures. And I don't say that like we were the go-to. We were in part a go-to for some school districts, but we were also a direct contact for foundations, people who want to make donations, companies who wanted to sell you a product to make this situation easier so you could do remote. And again, it really felt post-mass shooting level of inquiry. It was different. On the 22nd, information that immigration enforcement officers would be leaving the area by the weekend was coming from multiple sources. Again, no validation. I don't have communication with immigration enforcement, no direct line there, but a number of, I think, vested stakeholders that might be connected to the effort, even if it's on a periphery, like the space that's being used for organization purposes, things like that. We were hearing little pieces. I emphasize little pieces, no way to confirm, but we're constantly trying to just keep a pulse on community and what's going on. On the 26th, we had no school. It was a teacher workshop day, so it was known there would be no school, but it was also deemed a snow day. So not for kids, but for staff. It's a little messy, literally and figuratively, but so the 26th, there's no school. So again, another day where there's no data point. On the 27th, we had a 2-hour delay. The wind was still blowing snow everywhere. The roads had drifts. The treatments couldn't penetrate the surface of the roads. If you drove it that morning, you know it was pretty bad. But we did the 2-hour delay so we could clean up. But whenever we have a 2-hour delay, you need to know that we have a whole lot of kids that don't come to school because they got to walk in it. Someone's got to drive in it and they're not always comfortable, all the things. Our largest absence number, which I'll show you here in a minute, was on that day, which makes sense for lots of reasons. On the 28th, I put a note that sources seemingly confirming rumors that the increase in immigration enforcement officers had subsided. Again, just what I'm hearing, no confirmation. On the 29th, we were working to pull together additional ideas and examined attendance data and looking for different ways to pull that out of our system to find out exactly what we're looking to analyze and do it well. Also looking for ways to connect to families with community resources. We've had some donors reach out. Our Student Resource Center has done a ton of work and we're trying to help them facilitate that work. There was also an emergency bill put in and we testified to that. I ended up testifying in writing to that because I was on the wait until it was after 5 p.m. and they hadn't even gone to the second category yet. So time fizzled on me there, but we did submit in writing. But things that are worth noting, things that may not be on everyone's radar, and I shared some things, but not all things, but I think it's important for you to know that whether you agree or disagree with my approaches as superintendent, I need you to know that we're working very hard to keep our schools as a safe space, no matter what. And to think that I'm not taking grenades from both sides, you'd be wrong. I'm definitely taking grenades from both sides, maybe from a political space. But I think it's important to note that I'm just constantly running through filters. What can we hold that our kids don't have to? What can we help mitigate so that our kids can still do what they need to do, but not feel like this is going to happen at school? So some examples of that. We had a couple of requests to use our school space for rallies as a place to either start and or finish. There were multiple groups that inquired, some formally, some less formally. And I just decided that that wasn't a good use of school space. If it turned into some kind of conflict and then some kind of law enforcement intervention, what kid was going to feel safe when on the weekend or some night recently there was some kind of, you know, resistance amongst each other in a space like a school? I made the decision around that, and for logistical purposes, how many people, what would we need? I made a decision that we were not able to honor those requests. We worked with students who wanted to express their views so that it could be done safely. Principal Radke, LPD, we worked with a number of people. Students did a march last Friday, but they did it after school, like right at 2 o'clock. I feel like they got their point out there. There was good communication with media. LPD helped kind of facilitate the path so that there wasn't, differing views looking to agitate our students. And that was important to us. But initially, they wanted to do it during the day, in the middle of the day or towards the end of the day. And part of what we worked through, again, this is not stuff you see publicly necessarily, but kids want to do this at 1:30. Well, at 1:30 on Friday, John and his team were recognizing students for their academic and competitive success and closing with the unified basketball team, which is our special ed team with player coaches that compete with them. That was the effort that was going on Friday afternoon. And I think the kids were very organized and respectful, and they said, well, we don't want to walk out on that. And so I think they did a really good job. They got to exercise their expressions that they wanted out there, and were willing to work with us to do so. So we were happy with that. We work closely with LPD every day, every day. We talk numerous times a day. What are you hearing? What are we hearing? My biggest concern around school safety and school ground safety was as much about people who wanted to protest, pro or against, and doing it at our entrances. On Tuesday afternoon of the first week, we got word that people who don't live in our community were going to protest at the front doors of the high school on Friday. So we did things. If you dropped your kids off on Friday, there were two cruisers parked out front of the Green Ladle and nobody knew why. But they were there to make sure if people came on our grounds to protest that were not our kids, that had anything to do with our schools, we were not going to allow it. And so those are things that kept popping up. And they've been great partners. And I just want to reiterate that LPD did not carry out immigration enforcement, but I think they've done a good job, at least working with us on how we make sure we're keeping our community safe. We worked on attendance data each day. It was all over the maps. Then we got to a place that we said, we need to do multiple years so we have something to compare to, because winter is challenging anyway. So we started pulling that. Well, I don't know if you recall this, but about a year ago, we moved to an analytics software. And so that didn't necessarily talk to prior data. And also we have a new system with Reach My Teach, which seems to be working much better for families, where they can just tell you like why their kids were out, and it's interactive on the phone and multilingual. But if they do it at 8 o'clock at night, the next morning, all your data is different. So it's like you had to let your data run and be updated. And so it slowed that process down a little bit. We reached out to our administrators with a survey and just said, we need you to dump in here. What are the impacts on kids, impacts on families, impacts on resources? Who's absent? Have you had a chance to try to follow up? Those kinds of pieces. What are your biggest concerns? What are the biggest rumors? So we tried to gather that information, and we were looking at that as we went throughout the week. We also continue to monitor and consider future steps and scenarios. So we know that, Portland was looking at how do we maintain education offerings, and we heard from multiple of the districts that they didn't have the resources or the means to pull that off and didn't feel it would be effective. But we kept thinking about what could we do if this is prolonged and ongoing. And I don't think we're anywhere from destination perspective right now, but I think it would behoove us to at least be mindful of what things might need to happen if something else were to be longer and more enduring. We got scenarios from others. We went through some scenarios ourselves. And I think that was good practice because things popped up. We monitored and followed up on information that became available. We monitored situations and ultimately sought out LPD assistance as needed. One thing that it might have been nothing, but there was a person that was standing outside the back gate entrance of the high school with a whiteboard, and as kids walked by, he would make notes on it. He did that for 2 days last week. The first day, kids came in and said, "This is really freaking us out." Like, he hasn't done anything to us, but it's weird. Like, to have someone standing there making notes, we don't know what he's writing, and it's just awkward. So Thursday afternoon, we put an administrator out there, and Friday morning, I was out there and asked him if he needed anything, what he was up to. Had an interesting dialogue. He was quick to remind me that he was on school grounds, and I was quick to remind him that I was the superintendent, and I didn't want him on school grounds. But ultimately, he ended up on one of our campuses, walking through, and one of our administrators said, "Hey, you're not supposed to be here." So LPD assisted with that, making sure that he was no risk to our schools, which turned into another layer of him showing up at Dingley demanding to see me, but we worked through that. But just we work to be very intentional with information, and try to hold the line of school being a safe space, and fighting the temptations or the bait that was out there of the sound bite or the for or against or for, and really just made it about teaching and learning as much as possible, knowing that we have other resources through our Student Resource Center. Again, efforts from funders and other community networks, those actually continue. We're looking at some things that we might be able to do to help facilitate, because we have some infrastructure through our Student Resource Center, but we're being very intentional about it. Attendance. So when we look at multi-year, this goes back to 22-23, but if I can get you to look at this 25-26 column here, so you can see that the difference in numbers going back year to year. So in that early on, here's the other thing you have to do is you look at like what week it is of school, because the dates don't line up because of weekends. So you got multi-year, midterms, weather, dates don't align week to week, year to year. So again, we did our very best to try to match that day of that week of school. And so that's why you see this chart built the way it is. And then on the right-hand side, we have reason given for enforcement. And so there's what we know and what we don't know. So we tried to get the word out to parents that our hope is that you will tell us like what your situation is. I also get that that's complicated, because if you don't want your information out there, you don't want to say. And so with the numbers way to the right, those are the numbers of families that in the system use the rationale of, I'm not sending my child, and this is per kid. Some of this is like, so like if in the first one it says 3, if a mom called and said, my 3 kids won't be in school, we counted 1 for each kid. So that would be 3, not 1. So you can see the numbers there on the right-hand side. That's how few people were telling us, my kid's not going to be in school because of immigration enforcement. Now, having said that, I can't tell you how many people, I can go find it, didn't tell us why their kid was out. But on any given day, we have hundreds of kids that we don't know why they're out. We never get told. Again, this is part of our overall effort. So on Tuesday, Karen had to tell me to calm down, because we were over 1,400 kids not in school. And the immigration enforcement push was feeling heavy, right? But it was also the late start. That was the 2-hour delay. So you got the weather, you got all the things, but I looked at this and said, if we have a similar situation tomorrow, we're planning differently. We're talking differently. And I know that's a challenge for some to hear, but when I look at that and I think, there's your 20% mark. And that's, having an attendance concern year after year like we've had is one thing. 20% is another. That's a different number. But then you can see going up to Friday, and I tried to get today's number, but it's still filtering through. So like last Wednesday is a good example. That was like, for me, behind the scenes, that was like my breakpoint day of, we think there's going to be less enforcement. We know we had a ton of kids out, but we know it was snow affected. And we actually had less kids miss school last Wednesday than we did the year before. Now, whether that was cold, flu, cold snap, it's all of the question marks. And so what we weren't sitting on was information that said, holy smokes, all our kids aren't coming to school. We got asked some questions that I think were grossly insensitive that I won't even repeat. But we just needed to be mindful of variables. and knowing that we as a district have significant attendance concerns every day. I also heard through the grapevine that some other schools are marking kids absent excused. And we're following the criteria of the statute. We've also said out loud, we're going to hold kids harmless. So we're hopeful they'll continue to come to us to say, hey, Mr. Radke, I couldn't take that midterm on that Friday because I just couldn't. You know, we'll work to honor those student scenarios and do the best we can with it so that they're held harmless. I do think it'd be irresponsible to just openly not follow the statute. I don't think that's what we stand for. I would struggle with that. You know, my certification and license has language in it too about upholding the law. But I also think we want to do this with a grain of salt and be intentional about it. If other districts are doing it, it doesn't mean we should. That's my opinion. We're going to continue to monitor and do what we can as families make tough decisions for themselves. Just some thoughts. We want to recognize the disruption this has caused overall. It's real. No matter what you believe, the disruption is real. The containers for stress each of us hold have been more full overall, and for some it's overflowed. And I was once told, and I carry this with me, that emotions, including fear, don't have to be rationalized by others, because for those people, it's as real as could be. I continue to believe our schools are a safe place to be, and we just have to continue to keep a pulse on things every day. If you have any questions or want to go back to another slide for data, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions for the superintendent? We'll go down the line with Councilor Harriman.
Thank you. Thank you for all this information. My biggest question was about attendance impacts, but given all the other variables, I understand how it can be really difficult to figure out exactly what the causes are. But I appreciate you making the attempt to put the numbers together and compare to previous years. Definitely.
Member Glant.
I just want to say thank you. This was quite informative. We don't know what you know, obviously, but I want just to thank you for informing us and, you know, let us know what we can do.
Member Eames.
I was just wondering what holding kids harmless means. I'd just like to get walked through that, because you're not going to do absent excused, but you aren't going to hold them. I forget what the word would be. You're going to hold them harmless, not harmed. So how?
Yeah, so that came up a lot for us over the last couple of weeks. So I think the first place is in typical times, if you're absent unexcused, the makeup work can be a little different. And so whether it's an individual's teacher's kind of classroom level rule, written or unwritten, or hey, you missed the test, you can't make it up, that kind of stuff. So we want to make sure that we are not holding that over kids. What that will look like as we go, I think, is part of that day-to-day decision making. But I also think we want to have conversations a bit around process, because we also have some kids who've been at like 10 days of school this year. And I want to walk through, you know, what's the criteria for you making up a semester of work, not just the midterm you missed. I think we want to hold kids harmless, but if they're saying, hey, I have a need, and we're going to have to push this out as the dust kind of settles, but if kids have a need for a thing, we want to see what we can do. That's what I mean by hold them harmless. And the other thing we're trying to do is, so we have to maintain truancy logs. And so the note in the truancy log, if the parents have made us aware, can be fear of immigration enforcement. What we put for a note in the truancy log doesn't, I don't want to say it doesn't matter, because it does, but it doesn't, there's no penalty to that. It's a note in a situation that's very truant. And truancy, from our perspective, we start looking at it 3 days, 5 days, 7 days, and 10 days, and then beyond 10. So I think when we look at the demographic of a particular kid, or the data set of a particular kid, if they missed very little school and then they missed 10 days as 2 weeks, it tells a story. So I think that's part of what I mean by we're going to hold kids harmless. We're going to be intentional, but we can't just ignore the statute and do this blanket, everybody can redo everything, you know, no harm for anyone. It's tricky, especially if things like midterms. But the goal is to be thoughtful about process and be open-minded to conversations as they come up.
Just to follow up on that topic, are there other impacts in terms of extracurriculars, activities, scholarships, anything like that? A distinction between excused, unexcused?
I don't think so in scholarships, unless it's like a perfect attendance scholarship. I want to ask clarifying questions on that though, because if there are some, we may have to look at how we problem solve that. As far as activities have gone, a little chuckle in my voice if you, and I got a call about a student at doesn't matter what grade. The parent said that they were nervous about immigration enforcement during the day, but wanted their child to continue to compete in practices and after-school games. To which we said, no, that didn't make sense to us. So again, trying to be mindful of that. But no, we've not seen, and Principal Atkins here too, and I know he's been looking with me and sharing data back and forth. We have not seen a drop in participation in after-school activities. We have not seen a drop in attendance for after-school events. Nothing significant that it's like, hey, where is everybody? But we don't count at the door every time, so it's hard to know. But we've not seen that, at least at the high school level. We did get numbers from elementary principals. They were, because this data is so screwy, I was like, well, give me your anecdotal too. And a lot of principals said at various schools, like 30 to 60 kids, that we're pretty sure this is why they're not in school, whether parents have said so or not. But really that was about patterns, kids who don't usually miss and now they are, that kind of stuff.
So just to continue on that point, then how, if there is going to be some distinction in terms of holding students harmless in terms of their academics, but as you were mentioning earlier, it's tough to track why students are absent. Is that just going to be managed at the classroom level, at the building level? How are you going to make that distinction?
I think it lands more as a directive from me with some scenarios, and then we ask principals to carry that out in their schools. But I'd think that in those situations, there would be some level of blanket messaging and then scenario-based conversations. And I keep looking at John because he's the principal in the room, but he already does this with his staff when there's questions around a makeup for a midterm or assignments that are missed and people want to know how they should navigate it. He should be able to help with that.
Member Bowden.
Thank you. No, I just wanted to thank Superintendent Langlois for keeping a level head and making good decisions for our district and thoughtful decisions for our students and our families. And I know you had a lot coming at you over the last couple of weeks, and that was evident. And usually I'll text you or try to call you, and you pick right up or you answer. And it's been pretty quiet for the last couple of weeks, so I know you've been going through a lot. And I just want you to know I appreciate your decision making for our district. So thank you.
Member Eames and then Member Hurd.
I was just going to ask what you need from us at this point.
I would say honestly, just patience and kind of trust whatever process this is, in that I don't want to make $1 million knee-jerk reactions and put out systems that don't work. And I think fear can do that to us. And I'm really trying to navigate all of that. So I would just say patience and just know that we're being intentional. We're not ignoring any particular side or vein of the conversation. We're really just trying to make sure whatever we're doing, schools are for teaching and learning, and not for immigration enforcement or other measures. And just essentially stay the course. But I'm also very appreciative of input. And so you may be hearing or seeing things that I don't. And so many of you have reached out to me over the last couple of weeks. I'm appreciative of that. If I didn't get back to you timely, I apologize. Usually I'm pretty good at that. But it's important to know that, hey, you're talking to folks and you're hearing some things too. So that helps me, while it can create pressure, it helps understand the pressures and what people are leaning toward or reaching for.
Member Hurd.
Thank you. So yes, I will echo what Member Bowden said. I'm going to start coming to your house at 5 a.m. because you never return my calls or answer. But I know you're busy. But to also go off of kind of what you just said, like we had a retreat and we kind of talked, and when we were asking like what you need from us. I think it's easy for us to sometimes let our emotions get the best of us. You see people in the grocery store, people are emailing you, people are texting you, people are calling you, and you kind of get all of that. And so then we can be emailing you and bombarding you when you're already bogged down. And so as committee members, we just need to remember that like you are most, you know what's going on and you know what's going to work, really what's going to work best for our district because you are in the thick of it every single day, you and your team. And so we just need to remember to be mindful of that. And so I did just have a couple questions kind of on domino effect of what this is going to look like for our district and the community. I'm assuming we probably have some families who are not going to work or not venturing out into our city. And so we know we have very limited resources for the students in our district now. And I know contrary to what some of our city believes, Lewiston Public Schools cannot provide all of these services to everybody at all times. And so I just want to make sure we have resources available. Like if families reach out and say like, hey, like I need food or I need this or I need that, like that's not something that we would necessarily provide outside of what our nutrition program already provides. But like, do we have resources for people in the community that are saying like, I haven't been able to get to the grocery store? Like, unfortunately, I know we don't have the resources to be able to provide food for all of these families or clothes or, pay your electricity bill or anything like that. So are we doing what we can do to provide that? But also too, I want to make sure that like, we're not trying to overextend ourselves to, because of course we feel for our community, but also at the same time, like we're going into budget season. We have to look at kind of like our bottom line and like where we're at now.
I think the overextending has a couple of pieces to it. One is I worry about, and I'm just being totally honest with the world right now, I worry about independent contractors. We are such a large system. If we have one or two people at a particular school decide, I'm going to offer this to my handful of kids, and it doesn't go system wide, that's problematic. We saw that during COVID. We saw people ripping up parts of different schools saying, why does my kid have this and those kids don't, and vice versa. So I want to be very intentional with any kind of rollout. That said, with things that are kind of outside of the scope of school, our Student Resource Center does a fantastic job getting resources out to the community. Natasha and her team continue to work at that. And there has been an increase in volume. I also think that there's a lot of community partners that are doing very similar things. If this persists, I think we want to see what we can do, even if it's off hours, to coordinate and give people a place to dump that list of needs and see what we can do to disseminate. We have had some donors reach out to say, what can I do? Some of them have ideas. Some of them are asking me, and I'm trying to just see how these tides will go before we commit funds to a certain thing, because I want to make sure we're not overextending, but without intentionality. So I guess what I'm saying is, Natasha, if you're watching this, she's amazing. She'll give up 23 hours a day for kids. But that's not real. So if we're going to do that through the Student Resource Center, we're going to have to resource her to resource that effort. And we'll look at scalability as those things happen. So we are already providing some things outside of our typical scope. It is helpful if people can come get things, and it's important that we're connecting that to students. I know it's a challenge that we have at the Student Resource Center, that we have some adults show up that don't have children with us, and we do try to redirect them. We have a brochure that we share with a number of resources that are applicable to their particular need, but not necessarily through the school system. There's also some things I've said we can't do. And so I've had people reach out and ask, if I give you money, can you give it to people so that they can pay their rent? And I've said, no, I can't be that fiscal agent. Now, what could we do? We can help gather info. We could help with different resourcing, but I can't give money to a family. I think it's too tricky as a fiscal agent. Can we give money to an entity that can work with families if they can validate it? Sure, but it has to be donor dollars, and it has to be tied all back on paper, and it cannot be Lewiston Public Schools municipal funds or state subsidy. It cannot and will not. I won't do it. It's not appropriate use. So I'm kind of going in different angles from your question, but I'm very mindful, because I have had people ask, like, can you help me with my electric bill or my rent? And it's like, I can help you try to find someone who might be able to help you. But I cannot write a check from Lewiston Public Schools to any individual to help with their bills in these times. It's just not something we can do. If a donor says, "Hey, we want this money to go to this," kind of like the Student Resource Center, we can work on how we navigate it, but I'll be very intentional from an auditing perspective, and making sure the money lands where the donors intended without exhausting our staffing.
Yeah, go ahead.
So yeah, that was kind of what I was going on. Like, we know Tasha's amazing over there at the Student Resource Center, and she has, well, I mean, she only has so many hours in a day, and we don't want to overextend her, but we also don't want to overextend the current sources that she has for those students. And so I just want to make sure, I'm sure her and her team, and I'm sure you guys are also too doing a great job. I just want to make sure we're working, within boundaries, like with what we have. And not trying to go more, as we all want to, but is it real? What does that look like realistically for our district?
Yeah, I think scaling is important. We can't forget that anything that we do is going to take time, energy, resource, people. But we've had a number of people reach out to say, if the Student Resource Center needs help, I would make myself available to go help. So that's all kind of coming together.
Member Harper.
Thanks for sharing the thing today. Thank you so much for putting together all of this information for us. I know this is the first meeting that we've been able to have since all of this happened. And I was just wanting to state, I know that as you have said, the impact has been really real. And you mentioned October 25th level volume of concern. And I would say, like the trauma also, I think for a lot of families is that level, especially where I think just, students of color and like staff of color in general have been, regardless of their citizenship status, are like feeling concerned. And so I wanted to say that, and to just say that it's just had a really significant impact. And so I know that this like it's going to be a continual monitoring process of, what are the situations on the ground and how are we reacting? And I know that you're clearly balancing that every day. I'm curious about, because the messaging that you put out, those 3 messages were very much, focusing on schooling, and school as a safe place. And so I was curious about what is your practice or protocol in terms of like making sure that you're keeping a good pulse of the things that are happening on the ground. Like, I know that you're getting lots of different messages kind of from all over the place, but just thinking about, as far as, I know you talk a lot with the building leads, the principals, and like thinking about what is the practice of, the teachers that have the most connection with our students every day, and making sure that whatever stories they're hearing, whether, you said you can pull that data, but maybe don't necessarily always get the anecdotal stories, which is kind of a lot of times like where some of the impact messaging comes from. So I was just curious if you could speak to that.
I mean, it's not perfect, but I think the biggest thing we can do is to continue to listen and continue to tell people, don't stop telling us the things that you know, hear, experience, feel. And again, that creates a lot of volume. It can build a lot of pressures, but if we don't do that, there'll be just so much happening we don't know about. So I do think it's the being a conduit for information, which I think for us and my immediate team, we've just been at this so long that a lot of people will talk to us, but I'm also not blind to sometimes when you're the superintendent, people don't want to tell you things because of your title. So we do lean on building administrators, department heads, things of that nature to try to help filter things up. I'll also say in today's world of social media, a lot of information can move quickly. And so I kind of have a few people that will tell me what's going on social media. I don't dive in there very often. I think it's an occupational hazard, but I do have people that keep a pulse on things and try to share things. But I would say in the last 2 weeks, I think I heard from all of you in one way, shape, or form, whether it was in person or via email, and I welcome that. I don't, because you may hear things that I won't as well. Um, so be an open conduit and be willing to be receptive and not shut down different groups, but like take what they're saying as okay. They may have a perspective or they might have a particular angle that is something that they live, but it's still valuable information. And our goal is to represent all of our kids in a safe school and a safe classroom. So it's not perfect. There'll always be a voice that maybe didn't get heard as well as it should have. But I think if we make sure the channels are open and we never close them, that's really important.
Thank you. Yeah, I can just imagine, sorry, I don't know if I see. Imagine the volume is a challenge. But yeah, thinking about just like, are each principals also sort of giving that same message to all of their staff so that, you know, all of those stories can filter up. And then, what was the other piece I was going to say? You know, I know you were, you know, there's such a small percentage of people that would feel safe saying, like, giving a reason for what they're going through. But I just wanted to kind of put out there, you know, if someone were to cite sort of a safety concern versus like anything specific, if that would be just like something that you'd be open to hearing and that would be good information, you know.
Yes, this actually came up with management about a week ago, and it was, well, what if a parent calls and says we have a family emergency? Like, well, we're not the family emergency police. You write it down, and that's excusable. So I wasn't looking to discern what people shared as much as say the statute's pretty clear. If it's these things, we can excuse it, and if it's not those things, we can't. But family emergency is on there. And so if people are feeling like this is a family emergency for them, it's not for me to define that. So we did tell management that that's something that we would accept as an excused absence.
Member Hurd.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I hope that, you know, we know that immigration offices have been in our state for a very long time. This isn't like a new thing. And unfortunately, the news and social media and certain leaders in our city tend to make hysteria sometimes. And so I hope that with this incident happening, the community sees LPS cares, that these are the steps that we are going to take to keep their children safe. These are the policies and procedures that we will follow. So if something like this does happen again, like they know what's coming. I feel like there's less, the unknown is what's scary. The unknown is where people tend to sometimes feel that fear. And so now that they kind of know that like this is as a district, this is what we're going to do. These are the steps we're going to take. This is how we're going to protect your children. Like, hopefully, you know, if this does happen again, it won't be, I'm not saying it won't be scary, but maybe it won't be as scary. Like they know they can count on us. They know they can count on you. They know they can count on on your team. Like, there's a little bit of, you know, familiar. I can't talk tonight. Thank you.
That's going to be our continued goal is schools are a safe space, and what can we do to ensure that that's where we stay? Again, trying to avoid temptation and bait. And I think the hardest thing with things like immigration enforcement, it's not just happening in Lewiston, Maine. It's happening all over. And so when people pick up on a video clip or a picture, you know, oh my gosh, was that like at one of our schools, or was that halfway around the world? When was it? You start to disaggregate different pieces, and I think pieces of information are almost more damaging right now than absence of information. I know people will make up their own truths, so I think we all do that. It's human nature. But when you have a nugget and it supports your thought process or your fears, people are running with it, and I think that that can be a really scary time. So I'd also echo to people: be mindful of what you're exposing your kids to. Don't shelter them, but make sure they know that what you're seeing is what's the source. And I'm not looking to criticize the source, but know there are sources for information. And I'll be honest, and this is probably not going to get me any points with anyone, but I've seen the hysteria from just about every angle one can imagine in the last couple of weeks. People are really worked up, and I think it is a truth, it is a fact that everyone is carrying more because of these situations. No matter what they believe, everyone is carrying more than they were 2.5 weeks ago, which is going to lead to other choices that are not always the best.
Other questions for the superintendent? I did one other item. I'm not quite sure the right way to ask this, but is there any sense of keeping tabs for students who have perhaps been caught up in immigration enforcement themselves, or students whose parents are no longer at home?
It's a great question. So there's what you think you know, and what you're privy to know. So what I will say is this. It's my understanding that immigration enforcement has protocols for if parents are not available for the kids. And I've heard stories from elsewhere that Department of Health and Human Services may pop into school with different piece of information. We've not had that yet. We may not have it at all, but we have not had that. We did, for what it's worth, we have been in communication with some educational leaders in Minnesota to just talk about different things that they've experienced and things that surprised them and things that they didn't think were possible or could happen. And it's the whole range of things, but I think I want to go back to your question in that we know if we know, but we're not the outlet, right? We're not privy unless we are. And so if DHHS says we're here to pick up these two kids because their parents are unavailable, we can put two and two together, but we may not be told that. It's also not something that's never happened, unfortunately, for us. Not recently in the last couple of weeks, but it's happened where parents can't come get the kids for different reasons. So yeah, we don't have like a running number. What I can say in the last 2 weeks, to my knowledge, we have had no students be picked up by immigration enforcement. And that's always I say that as to my knowledge. But I also don't know if I would know. I think the other thing that we've started to talk about internally is what if we have some kind of massive drop in enrollment longer term of like 1,000 kids? Like, what does that do to us? That would be bad for us from lots of reasons. But we've started to have those thoughts. If families relocate or move to just be in a space that works for them, what does that look like for us if they unenroll? So we've already started to think about that. Hopefully never need it, but we keep thinking of scenarios.
Okay. So we'll go to public comment in a moment. I just want to say this is just an agenda item as an update. There isn't a particular vote or anything attached to it, but I do want to just see if the committee had any kind of follow-up topics or issues or potential items that need discussion on this in the future. Obviously, we have the general agenda item, future agenda item note at the end, so we can come back to it, but just if anyone has anything, you're welcome to share it now. Okay. Is there any public comment on this agenda item? Okay. Please start with your name and city of residence and affiliation to LPS.
Hi, Martin Chartrand. I'm newly a resident of Ward 3, just moved there from elsewhere in Lewiston. And I'm a citizen. This is a lot. I'm going to do my best to keep it short. So one of the reasons I'm here is I work as a behavioral health professional. I work with kids, and I also have been in the community over the past couple of weeks, and I've heard from community members who have been impacted by immigration enforcement and parents that are very afraid. and one of the things it's in our training as behavioral health professionals is that kids can't make progress in the skills we're trying to teach them if their basic needs aren't met, the hierarchy of needs, and those safety is one of those basic things in Maslow's hierarchy. So I know that's just as true about academic learning, and I know that the experiences of immigration enforcement, both what we're hearing and the collective trauma that we're getting from elsewhere and what's happened over the past couple of weeks, has created that situation I can imagine for kids. I've heard from parents, I haven't heard from kids directly, but and one of the things we know about trauma, there's a lot of definitions of it, including an overwhelming event that you have no control over. One thing we know is that when one of the things that can make a difference about whether it has a long-term impact or whether it is something that someone can grow through and recover from is whether it's validated by the authority figures and support people in the person's life. And when it's not, one term uses it's a double bind, because you're knowing one thing internally, but you have to pretend something else externally. So a classic example would be somebody who's sexually abused, but their family sort of pretends it's not real. But in a collective trauma, like what we're going through with immigration enforcement, I can see how certain policies that maybe were well-intentioned, and I may not be understanding them correctly, may cause that, because if you're learning about history where people are being oppressed, people are put in camps, and you're told that's just in the past, but you know what's happening now with our immigration enforcement jails, and that's a double bind. And even when you're told,
If you don't mind just wrapping up in the next
yeah,
few seconds, please.
even when you're told school is a safe space, but you don't feel safe because you have a parent or someone in your neighborhood that got taken, that can be a double bind. So I just really want to emphasize that whatever the policy is, I agree with being careful on sound bites externally, and I appreciate that. But I think teachers need and school staff need to be able to talk to kids about what's going on, to teach about it. And I think that we really need more mental health support and counselors to help kids go through this. So,
All right, thank you.
thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to comment on this agenda item? Okay, any other comments, questions from the committee before we move on? Anything else from the superintendent?
Not on this item.
Okay. Oh, sorry, Member Harper.
Just the what Martin shared as far as collective trauma, and again, like pointing back to the mass shooting level sort of like response that communities had. I know that in the past there have been like community organizations that have been brought in to provide extra mental health support, and I know that it's also, you know, one of our goals is, you know, around, or at least in our draft goals around like trauma informed school environment and all of those things. I was just curious if like that outreach has been done for additional mental health counseling support in the schools.
So we made some notes just last week about what some other efforts might be. I'm trying to wait and see how things go. And so it's been discussed already. And we still have to see how some of this stuff plays out, but I think that these factors are real. We were in a meeting, our ad team, and I'm not going to use a name, but someone raised their hand and said, what about the kid who's like really freaking out about this, who lives with white parents, who's been here all their lives, and they're just like not sure what to do and they're really scared for their friends? And my answer in the moment was really, I'm not sure. This was very early on in the 2 weeks that we just had, but certainly there's going to be a need for something.
Okay, thank you. I think we'll move on to the next agenda item. So agenda item number 9 is Latin honors discussion. Who's taking this one?
So Principal Ratke is going to share some different things about Latin honors.
Let everybody get their hand out before I start talking. So this is just a quick one pager to sort of update the board on this. We began talking about this last year at Lewiston High School, which is instituting a Latin honors system, which is merely to say that we have some students who earn the title cum laude, some magna cum laude, some summa cum laude, as a way to recognize outstanding academic achievement. And so it began as an informal conversation at the department head level. And then it moved from that to see what the faculty thought about it. And they surprisingly came back 64-5 in favor. And you can't get them to vote 64-5 about extending vacations. I mean, so, they're very strong support. One of the things that we've also learned in the feedback loop through college admissions in the aspirations office is that our students feel like as they go into the fall of their senior year, we don't actually recognize a lot of student achievement prior to the senior year. Now, if you've ever gone to a senior assembly, it's great. I mean, we recognize lots of kids, but they applied to college in November. So one of the other things, motivations behind this is to recognize good academic performance prior to, so that going into that, we can say, hey, as a junior, I achieved, the honor of summa cum laude. Well, what does that mean? It means that we got, a GPA of somewhere between 98 and 100, over your cumulative GPA. Now we do honor roll, but that's by the quarter. This is cumulative over your high school career. So that's a way to indicate what you've achieved at that point. And again, it would be updated senior year to be awarded an honor at graduation. So basically, we ran a quick test the end of first quarter this year, how many students would we actually be talking about? And it looks like we would have 5 students who hit summa cum laude, 1.2% of the class. And then we have magna cum laude would be about 27 students. Cum laude would be 80 additional students for a grand total of roughly 29% of the class earning these academic honors. That'll change, but that was just you always in your head wonder, well, how many kids are we actually talking about? The other thing is this is not meant to replace anything. Honor roll will still be calculated on the quarterly. The top 10 students will be recognized for their outstanding achievements. Kids who choose to apply to the National Honor Society, and I want to make sort of a distinction. The National Honor Society is a separate organization sponsored by the school, but it's a club that you have to get the grades to qualify for and then be part of, be admitted to. And there's a process for that. This is grades alone, a way to recognize truly significant academic achievement. And certainly any student who's able to pull an 88 or better, I believe should be recognized. It's a real achievement as opposed to, I'm not a big fan of the good conduct medal type stuff, but I mean, you worked hard. You worked hard, you went to school, you did what people asked of you. And so just as a way to recognize them. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Member Eames.
Is this a permanent decision about the cutoffs, or will that be shifting as grade inflation takes over even more?
Well, you'd have to do some pretty significant grade inflation to, that's I would set that, I mean, nothing's hard and fast ever, right? You always come back to it and look at it. And if 50% of the students are achieving Latin honors, maybe we want to relook at it, but.
Bates had to do that, so that's why.
Yeah, no, it's one of those, that won't be an issue for a while, but certainly something to look at. Yeah.
Member Bowden?
Would the changes go into effect for this year or for next school year?
Go.
So I'll chime in on that, in that we actually had an internal question of, because this is a designation, would it be considered policy or would this become a practice? But we didn't want to do either without the school committee's input. So John and his team, and correct me if I'm wrong, are ready to deploy this if you want it. But we're also prepared to have it go to policy subcommittee if you want to look at where it should live in policy. But this would be a practice and a designation on a transcript. So it doesn't require, like, the school committee doesn't vote on what's on the transcript necessarily, typically, but you could.
So short answer, yes, it could be applied to graduation for this year.
Correct.
For these
Yes.
students.
Yes.
And so what does that look like for the students graduating who have reached this?
Oh, yeah. So, it would be noted in the program.
Mhm.
It would be noted on their final transcript that went off to wherever they were going next.
Mhm.
And usually, in other places, what we ask people to do is stand at graduation. Would all who have achieved summa cum laude please rise and be recognized? And just run down through until we have, everybody who's cum laude and above recognized.
Is there like a distinct pin or?
We can certainly, yeah. I mean, when it gets to the to the jewelry, we absolutely will get something
Okay.
for them, because I know that's
A
important.
cord, just something.
Cord, a medal, some such thing. Yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah, because I think that's important. I mean, the title's great. It's great. They're applying to colleges. I fully support this. But I also think if we're doing this to give more recognition to the students who, have done really well, maybe not top 10, right?
Right.
But they've done really well throughout their 4 years. I think it's important that we recognize them at graduation with something
Mhm.
that stands out more than stand up and
Yep.
sit down.
Yeah. Happy
So-
to get, yeah. I mean,
Okay.
a sash, a ribbon, there's endless ways to do that. Just hadn't gotten that far into the process. We're planning graduation now. So
Yes, I'm aware.
get plenty of time to order. Plenty of time to order.
Got one. Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions? No, Reeves?
I didn't mean my question to seem like I was against this idea. This idea is wonderful. I just want to make sure there's a little flexibility in it. That's all.
All, it's like any rule. It's always subject to reinterpretation down the road.
Member Hurd?
Thank you. So it says no motion. So, I mean, you kind of get the gist that we're all fine with it. So it's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I think give public a chance to weigh in, and if there's no concerns, this is the kind of thing that I think it feels good, and it's nice. I liked the way the math broke down when John first presented it to us, that it's roughly 30% of your population, which makes sense academically. So it wasn't like a reward, like it wasn't a medal for participation or anything. It's you gotta work, but for a lot of our kids, really good work should get them a designation. If you're not in the top 10, like you just didn't get a top 10, and I think we're better than that.
Well, in a class of almost 400, we should recognize more than 10.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. Is this unusual at the high school level, or is
No.
it? No, okay.
No, it's fairly common in a lot of other high schools.
Yes. Member Hawkins?
I just wanted to say really quickly, this could be really helpful for those kids that are trying their best and maybe don't feel they're getting the attention they deserve. I know my son, it might have been what was needed to push him just a little harder. So I really like this idea, because there are kids that are doing their darndest and aren't quite hitting it. But if there was a little bit more, they might be able to say, I can put another 3 hours a night into this, or half an hour a night into this, whatever.
Member Jensen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I also love that this could be a motivating factor for some students. Anything that can engage students, and I think indirectly engage the parents in their learning as well, is definitely something we should pursue. So I'm very much in favor of this. Is it possible to get this like retroactively put into the agenda packet so the public can get the details?
Sure.
Great. Any other thoughts from the committee? Any public comment on this agenda item? Okay. Don't see anything else from Principal Radke or the superintendent? Okay, thumbs up. Sounds like a good idea. Thanks for bringing it to us. So next on the agenda item is number 10, to receive the FY26 budget update. Go right ahead.
So as you know, for those who've been around here for a bit, each year in and around November through that January window, I harp on our business office and our financial team to find out where are we. And this year, we know we've had some cost overruns, particularly around special education, some of it transportation for special education, but also our efforts to grow the climb program, which we knew to an extent we were going to push on that growth. But we're also looking up and seeing that, like last year, we had some things running over. So we're keeping a pulse on that right now. I want to thank Alyssa and her team in transportation for really being diligent with detail. They found us some cost savings and some inaccuracies in invoicing that were easy to most of which was easy to fix and clean up. So that's going to help with what those overruns may or may not be. But just letting you know, we're keeping a pulse on that. And we may have to deploy some strategies around some savings, but we'll be mindful about how we don't interrupt teaching and learning in the classroom. So we're looking at things like, what can we do with the LCIP? What do we have to pause? The famous Jake Langlis is your substitute for the day because it's going to take all of us to try to curb some of this spending. I don't feel like we're in dire straits, but I want to be very mindful, and just wanted you to know that if you hear, they said I can't do blank, it might be connected to a budget strategy to save a few bucks. And just want to be good stewards of the funds, but again, mostly just want to give you a spot check. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to take them.
I'll start with Member Hurd and then Member Hawkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I feel like I ask this every year. Do we have an idea about insurance yet? Like, when does that come in? Because we haven't heard that yet. And hold on one second, I'm going to ask you this so you can answer both at the same time. Member Eames had emailed the committee about allocation. And so I just wanted to know if you had heard about that yet. So either of those options.
When you say allocation, are you talking about the 279? So the 279 is available. This is that vetting window where I don't like to get excited one way or the other because every superintendent in the state and their teams are looking at every dollar factor, and then we often get a kind of a second cycle of it. But it's not a decrease for us. It's up a little. It won't be enough to cover steps and increases. But I will say I slept easier Friday night after that was released. We always worry about being shorted, which is like dire for us. And so it doesn't appear to be that, but I don't want to get ahead of myself, like just a few more days. But we get to about a week from now, I'll feel a lot more confident in the number and no pending shifts in it. But that's good. And then your question about insurance. So your question was, when do we find out? It's usually later in March. I'm looking at Bill because he's like my fact checker. Second week of April, we'll get a preliminary about mid-March. And we try to cheat a little bit. You can look at your usage, and if you're under 100%, you can kind of keep your fingers crossed that you stay lower in the increase. If you're over 100%, you kind of keep your fingers crossed that you don't get a massive increase. So we're below 100% usage currently. However, numerous districts around us last year faced 10 to 15% increases. And so I've asked Adam in our projection to do 15% this year for a healthcare increase. I'm worried that we're so close to that 100% usage, and because of our size, if we reach that, we might get a pretty significant increase. And it could also be zero, like we've seen in the past, and then we figure it out.
Member Hawkins.
You mentioned Superintendent Langlis is your substitute, and wanted to let you know that my students had no idea who you were until you were outside speaking to the principal. And then the looks on their faces were absolutely priceless. That was so much fun. Please do it again. For those who don't know, I drive school bus. So they're my kids when they're on my bus. That's just how I operate. They hate it. I love it. It's awesome. But I'm very appreciative of the numbers here. If anyone has input that they think I should know about these numbers, I'm glad to hear it because I haven't been involved in this for a while. And it's kind of like getting on the bike again after 15 years. The gears are spinning and I'm just kind of like, what? So if anybody has input they think I should have, please help.
Are you talking about the ED 279 numbers that you saw, or just you mean generally?
All of the above.
Yeah, okay. Fair enough. Okay. Member Glenn, I saw your hand first, and then Member Hurd again.
Thank you. When should we expect to get, I I think member Ames and myself are the ones that are requesting books this year. When
Yep.
should we get those?
Yep, so books and binders, it's like 5th, 6th, 7th around. I had to do 6, 7 just for my son. Of early March.
Early March.
So usually the first meeting, I'll do an overview once we flip into budget season, early March, and then we do some updates and those pieces. But in and around that first week of March, you'll have your binders. Yeah.
Member Hurd.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry, but the kids would use that word as that was cringe. But side note on that, talking about enrollment, because we know every student equates to $1, unfortunately. I hate to say it like that because it sounds awful, but are we looking at, are we having more students? Are we having less students? Did we gain some, like, where are we at?
So enrollment wise, we've had some in, some out, and we're still growing slightly, not as quickly as we were around this point last year, but there is still a slow uptick. I don't know what immigration policies will do that overall, but I know that apartments are getting closer and closer to being completed, and so we're still looking at that metric. Our projections are projecting to be up over the next 3 to 5 years. So by several hundred is the latest one I saw, I believe. Yeah. As far as subsidy goes, I'm sorry, I feel like I should throw this in. They do look at October 1 enrollment counts, your April 1 enrollment counts on a rotational basis. And ironically, subsidy benefits districts to some extent strategically that are shrinking. There's not a great support structure subsidy wise for schools that grow quickly. So it's like you make the pain of shrinking less, but if you grow quickly, it can get heavier. Where it can be helpful from a subsidy perspective is the hardship funds that are connected to students who are multilingual. Those funds are responsive to increase in numbers, if that makes sense.
Sorry, can you remind me the enrollment numbers that this current subsidy amount will be based on is April 1st, 2025 and October 1st, 2025? Or is it October 1st, 2025, April 1st, 2026? Do you understand what I'm asking?
I do. So the formula is using numbers that already exist. So April and October that already happened. The April number can feed into the system in a future sense, but also for adjustments.
Thank you. Member Glant?
Thank you. Can you refresh us? Are we in our second phase of bringing our kids back from special schools? And if we are, how are we doing with that? I haven't heard anything lately about bringing our kids back.
So I would love to have Director Crafts join us to give a really comprehensive update. But I will say, like anecdotally, we continue to bring kids back. But the other challenge we're finding, and if those of you who are here, I use the word deflect cost a lot. We have a lot of littles coming in who would otherwise not come to school here. They would go to school elsewhere because of their level of need. And that's where we are seeing money that we otherwise would be spending at a greater extent. So space-wise, Climb continues to look to grow as much as they can in that wing, but they're starting to feel it. We think another 10 or so, maybe 15 kids that could hold, but they will be maxed at that point.
Just to piggyback on that, I'm kind of excited, anxious, whatever, to hear how we're doing, whether we're meeting those goals. Was it a 5-year goal? Was it a 5-year plan?
Yeah, I still have that slide. It was year 1, we were trying to bring back a chunk, and then we were trying to get to 150. And then, yeah, so I still have that graphic so we could do a comparison. But I would say that we are pacing in the right direction. Space has become the concern, which we thought it would. We talked about using a wing and then needing more. We're on the bubble of needing more. And Karen kind of whispered in my ear here, but she said that the other thing that we do know already is from our CDS kids, and kids are already identified, next year, we will exceed likely that space first day of school.
And is your Thursday night, I know this is kind of related. The Thursday night that you're having, is that going to be broadcasted live?
Didn't plan on broadcasting because it's really like a community
Yeah.
interactive concept
Yeah.
meeting.
Because I assume some CDS will be possibly in that area.
We're hopeful that Thursday session is really about input and not about what I necessarily want. I think there's some guideposts for the engineers and for the architectural team, but that's Thursday, and I'll be pushing out that that's actually going to be across the parking lot at Connors, because this will be set up for the culinary arts lunch on Friday. But we'll get a sign on the door and remind people it's across the way.
Member Harper.
Thanks. So this is my first time looking at some of these spreadsheets, and I just had a general question about it's fiscal year 26 budget report. So I assume it's the budget for the whole school year. Is that right?
Yeah, so the current school year, it's weird how like the second half of the year is the fiscal year. So we run July 1st through June 30th, and it's always the second half of the year. So FY26 is the here and now. And when we do our budget work this spring, we'll be planning for FY27.
Okay.
If I might offer,
So January.
So if you're looking at
No.
the consent agenda financials,
Okay.
that's this year. That's an active.
Okay.
This
So yes,
fiscal
so it's going until June.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. And then another just kind of follow up. I was trying to wrap my head around the adult education revenue piece when it was showing basically a negative revenue. And it was looking like there were a number of line items that were just not budgeted for, but we got a lot of revenue from. And I was just curious as to why there would be those pieces.
It's a good question, and Bill, chime in if you want, but adult ed functions very differently than regular education in that we have some pay for classes or some labor training or enrichment type classes where people either pay, or for example, we have like the Department of Labor agreement to do apprenticeships. And so we get disbursements from the Department of Labor, but it's after we hit benchmarks. So you can see some revenue operate differently, but they always seem to close out the year okay. And we're big enough to float some of those things until those revenues come to be. Probably oversharing, but adult education, while it does get voted on as part of our process, is not part of the ED 279 process. So that subsidy is actually a whole separate set of rules and funding and revenue expectations around it. So, but Bill's coming up too. And Bill is formerly the adult ed director of Lewiston and Auburn, and prior to that, just Lewiston before going to Auburn.
So I think the negative is I missed that because I was focusing on my answer here. The negative, I think, was the 43,000, and that's because that's netting against a zero. So that's why it's showing the negative. And so anything that you see that's unbudgeted revenue wise for adult ed, Jake did a really good job of explaining, it's going to end up being a net zero, or that's something they're monitoring throughout the year. So there may be over expenditures too, but that's because additional revenues were collected, and they're factoring it in on that. So they're doing kind of more real time like a business would do, as opposed to a set budget through the year. But that negative is just the way that Munis puts that out.
also just say the administration does do a great job walking us through all the budget items and explaining everything once we get to the actual budget workshop. So have no fear. Well, some fear, but not too much, not too much fear.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess to that point, maybe we'll get into it, but I was just curious if there was anything like based on these reports that you wanted to highlight, Jake, as far as like concerning or unexpected positives. I know we already touched on some, but
Yeah, so I don't have anything concerning. So I do read through those before they reach the packet. But we also, once we get rolling here, probably next meeting, we'll be able to set committees and procedural rules, things like that. So the finance subcommittee actually sees these And we review different expenditure and funding related things, and then that circles back through the committee as well. So it helps when there's more of that process. But I would also say, whether it's now or at any of these meetings, ask away. We live it, so we sometimes talk like alphabet soup about it, and it's because we're doing it every day. And we try to give you definitions so that we can be intentional about saying words in full. And I don't mean that as any kind of negative. It's just we live in the soup, so we're kind of like using all these acronyms, and it's messy. So we try to be intentional to not do that, especially in the budget process.
Member Bowden? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I saw your hand. Any other points on this item? Anything else from the superintendent? No? Okay. All right, we will move right along then. So agenda item number 11 is the report from the school committee chair. The only thing I was going to mention is the forum on Thursday, but it sounds like superintendent will mention the details for that. So other than that, I have nothing to report. And next up is item number 12, which is the report from the superintendent.
All right, so I had a few list of updates. Montreal was one of them, but we were able to get them in tonight. So congratulations to them on their state championship. Also, we get excited about the skills competitions. Those happen March 11th, 12th, around there. But they did the local competitions, and those are being tabulated now, if not done already. So that's a pretty fun. It's a pretty fun thing to go into the shops and into the classes and see the kids competing in different things. We got a lot of really sharp kids doing amazing things. So we wanted to share that local competition has happened. We are going to share Miss McNamara probably at our next meeting if she's available, who just got recognized this morning as the State School Counselor of the Year from Montello, which is quite an honor. So we'll share more details about that, but we want to make sure she could be here. And we couldn't invite her tonight because she didn't find out till this morning. So it was kind of too much too quick, but we were able to take that in this morning. And I'll probably say it again, but the person who was sharing the announcement from a state committee asked a gym full of kids, how many of you have become a better person because of Mrs. McNamara? And like hundreds of kids were like, me, and adults too. So it was just such a feel good moment, but we'll recognize that formally. This afternoon, we had a bus go off the road on Switzerland. Lene actually gave a pretty good recap of it, but that's a pretty narrow space, and there was a garbage truck coming the other way. So they both got a little bit wide, and one of them slid down in. The initial report was that there are no injuries, but we continue to monitor kids, and they have access to the doctors if they need it. There were some bumps, though. We know we had at least one parent, so there was a bruised knee. One kid said, I hit my head, I think I'm okay, but we'll monitor those things. They were able to send another bus to pick up those kids and get them home. Largely middle school families, we called all of them, so the middle school team did a good job with that. 287 Main Street and the Dingley Concept Forum is Thursday night, again at Connors, and I'll push that out on our tools. I did want to remind you that we talked about doing a survey on the goals for input, not necessarily that sheet we looked at last week, but the initial one with like the 5 goals laid out. But I wanted to see what your take was on that first. Do you want to do work to it and then get a survey out, or because I have a survey kind of queued up if you wanted to just go as is for feedback. But I guess I want to get a pulse because it's a new group. Send it, or would you like to look at it first and then send it?
Member Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd prefer as much of a discussion as possible. I mean, 3 of us members that are new here had no say in really any of it. So I feel like it'd be more fair if we were able to have some input as well. That's just my take.
I feel like I'm seeing some nods. I'd be okay putting that on the future agenda, just doing it sooner than later, but yep. Okay.
Okay. Yep. So just to be clear, we'll not send the survey now, but hopefully soon after our next meeting.
Yes. Yeah. I'll also have procedural rules and subcommittees on our next meeting now that we have a chair, so we can get those working. So be thinking about all the time you like to spend invested in subcommittees. We look for your willingness to accept. And Karen has something she'd like to share too.
Go ahead.
We have 66 students from the high school sitting for the Seal of Biliteracy test tomorrow. And so I wish them all the best of luck on that. I'm sure they don't need it. I'm sure they'll do great. But I got the list a couple of days ago from the teacher who'll be proctoring, and I thought it was just a really great celebration to share. So hopefully, as usual, we will celebrate those students who are successful and get that seal of biliteracy. But I think for every kid who sits for it, that's a huge accomplishment. That's something that they choose to do. So 66 of our students will be sitting for that tomorrow.
Member Heard.
So thankfully, Karen, that number was not 67. Sorry, I'm gonna give you so much crap for that for the next couple meetings. But Jake, is it possible for you to just send out a quick little to the other? I mean, most of us know what the subcommittees are and like kind of what that time commitment entails, or Karen. So like, when do they usually, that kind of thing? You know, like how often do they meet, and then kind of a description of what they are.
Yep, that's a good idea. Any other points? Okay. You all set? Okay. So next up is item number 13, the report from the City Council representative, Councilor Airman.
Yes. So City Council last met on January 20th. We had a workshop with the police chief discussing a proposal to start a take-home vehicle program so that every officer would have a vehicle assigned to them. So it'd be a purchase of about 65 vehicles right now. That would hopefully prolong the life of the vehicles, both by having them not be running 24/7 and by having them assigned to a particular person who will hopefully care for them more so than a fleet vehicle. Still getting some more information about that, but it sounds like something that could save the city some money over the long term. We also, as we all know, we filled the Ward 5 City Council position and the Ward 5 School Committee position. The City Council next meets tomorrow evening. We're going to have a workshop on the city's financial audit, similar to the one that the school committee received recently. And we also have just some zoning and land use code amendments that we're doing the second reading on. We have some updates to parking violation fines. They haven't been updated in a really long time. We're also looking at, we won't be taking final action tomorrow, but we're looking at establishing a public safety committee as a standing committee rather than a mayoral committee. Same thing with an economic development committee. And we're also looking into a position of a public health coordinator for the city. And that's all I've got, if there aren't any questions.
Yep, Member Heard.
Thank you. So I got my tax bill in the mail, and it came with a nice little insert with some information. So if people have questions about that, is the city gonna offer some like workshop or a Q&A? Like reading it over, it looked like the city or residents were going to get like an estimate or an actual, and then there's an option to like appeal. And so like if people have questions, is the city gonna offer some sort of something?
Yes, so this is for the reevaluation. Yes, I believe the plan is to, there will definitely be the option to call the assessing office, email, all those things sort of on an individual basis. I believe they're also planning some more public outreach things. But that process will be taking place throughout the year. I think they said the new valuation is coming out this summer, late summer. And then, like you said, there's a process to appeal that if you don't think it's accurate. And yeah, but it's going to be a big change. First time we've done a full revaluation in about 40 years. And yeah, so just another note on the revaluation piece is that it doesn't change the total amount of taxes that the city collects. It just it realigns the property values to be more accurate so that everyone is paying more of their fair share based on the valuation. So some people's bills will go up, some people's will go down, and some will stay roughly the same is what they generally say.
So I'm wondering, is there ever a point that the city takes public input or comments on entities in the city that don't currently pay taxes. Like, is there a way to, for the public to get something on a referendum or something to, maybe private universities that don't pay taxes? Wink, wink.
I know that always is a big thing. Yeah, nonprofits are generally exempt from property taxes on, at least on properties that have to do with the nonprofit status. I believe that is a state law, so it isn't something that we can change on our own. I know some cities have done, and I just saw in the news, Portland is looking at, it's called a pilot, stands for payment in lieu of taxes. But it's really more of, these institutions don't have to pay this. It's sort of trying to work with them to come up with some kind of, some kind of payment to help with the lack of property taxes that come in from them.
Any other questions for Councillor Harriman? Okay, so next on the agenda is updates from school committee subcommittees, but there currently are none. So we will move on and come back to that at future meetings. So agenda item number 15 is school committee community announcements. Does anyone have any community announcements they would like to share? Member Harper.
Sorry, thank you. I was at the Lewiston Youth Advisory Council meeting this week. And just for anyone who doesn't know, they're a group of youth that are all Lewiston High School students who serve as an advisory council to the Lewiston City Council in regard to community issues affecting youth, and a liaison between the youth of the community and the city. And enabling youth to work toward goals that empower all of the community's youth to undertake service projects that enhance the community. And they are planning a forum, a youth-centered forum for the spring. And so they have a survey that's out right now for any young people in the community ages 12 to 25. And they are hoping to understand what youth want to see and hear from a panel, what has worked well, what hasn't in the past, and who the youth would like to hear from, and how to make it engaging and relevant. And so the deadline for that is February 6th, and anyone interested to take it can go to their Instagram accounts, which is Lewiston YAC _, or they also created a bit.ly link. So it's bit.ly//Lewiston Youth Panel to take that survey.
Okay, thank you. Any other community announcements? All right, agenda item number 16 is future agenda items. Member Bowden.
Thank you. I have a couple things here. Bear with me. So first, I felt a little unprepared this evening with our packet. And I know there's a lot going on, but this is actually a conversation that Member Hurd and I had this afternoon, where she was like, I kept looking and looking over the packet, like, he's going to give us an update on something, but like included nothing in the packet. And so a community member, Mr. Agrin, is not here tonight to yell at us about transparency. So I wanted to bring up the fact that, we got this great letter from Principal Radke about the Latin honors. Thank you. And then a great presentation from you tonight, but it was all new to us as well. And I just don't feel like it should be brand new to us as we're sitting here. I think it's something we should be able to review ahead of time, and maybe it wasn't ready ahead of time. Nope. Okay. So I just wanted to point that out. I just wanted to ask just for a little more transparency in our packets moving forward. Next, this is kind of tricky, so I'm going to, go ahead.
Just as a side, I went north this weekend, so some things were late, and I'm stuck in this conundrum too of not having enough time in the day at times, and people don't want it added to the agenda as an amended agenda. So like, what do you want from me? So if it's to have everything by Thursday, like, I wouldn't have been ready for an update and have everything in that packet on Thursday. But
I
if
would rather
also
be
not
an
to
amendment
amend,
than nothing.
I guess I feel like I need that feedback from the committee, because some of the feedback I've gotten over the last whatever chunk of time is don't amend. So
I would rather have the amendment.
Yeah, we can take hands. Yeah, Counselor Herman.
Knowing it's not my intent to amend.
Yeah, just to the point of amendments, I would prefer not to have additional items added, but if there's materials for an item that's already there, I would greatly appreciate that.
Other hands. Yeah, Member Heard.
Yeah, I agree. Cause I mean, sometimes we do get amendments with like rationale and stuff like that, and that's actual like new information that we have to kind of go, like, I feel like sometimes I'm like, where's Waldo? I have to like search and kind of like compare, like, what did we get before and what's added new? But if it was just documents that you added, I would definitely rather have that.
That's good to know. Member Eames.
Yeah, broken record here. Yes, please. Add the material before the meeting whenever possible, even if it's an hour before the meeting, although I hate that. But doing it early on Monday would be great. And even an amendment, if it needs to be there, yes. Because I really want to know. I want to come prepared. I want to have done my homework. I want to know what we're going to get. I don't like surprises. You always say that. Well, I don't like surprises either. And yeah. And the Latin honors thing, that could have waited a week or 2 weeks, so we would have been okay. But getting it just here it's just annoying.
So yeah, I would add, I think Monday is fair game to add documents. I mean, because there's not really any less transparency in that sense than getting it at the meeting. I would agree. I mean, up until an hour before, it's fair game in my opinion. And in terms of amending the agenda items, I would also suggest, I guess this is maybe somewhat contrary to what Member Eames was saying, but because it can depend on the item, but because there typically is quite a bit of time between our meetings, like 3 weeks in this case, I would typically rather have it amended, added for the meeting that's right about to happen so we can deal with it. And if it's not prepared enough and we learn that at the meeting, we can come back to it. I think that's better than having less information. And absolute worst case scenario, something is prepared and finished at 5:30 p.m. Still post it, right after the meeting or the next morning, because members of the public who aren't here or trying to follow along but can't, they only get, in that case, what you're sharing, if anything, through the YouTube stream. So that's, I think, frustrating. So it's just best to have everything on the website in that little packet that people can find. So that's my opinion as well. We understand that you're very extremely time constrained, but you have the documents by the time of the meeting. So just whenever they can be dragged and dropped over there, I think that would be appreciated. That's my view. Were you going to add something? Yeah.
Yeah, well, I just had one more agenda item.
Yes,
if
please.
that's-
Yeah. So we are discussing agenda
Sorry, that
items.
kind of went off.
That's a good point. So please
It's fine.
continue.
So, this past week, I had somewhat of an unpleasant, unfair, just overall, just not a good interaction with a teacher from our high school. And in that, there was some public weighing in with certain things. And I feel like overall the interaction turned into maybe this teacher is feeling frustrated and left some frustrations. And so I feel like we should have a discussion about what those frustrations are. And I wrote them down. I'm trying not to cross any lines here. But what was stated was that LHS is 28% proficient in math. And that's according to a state website. And so in response, the teacher did say, well, we need math placement exams. We need to add support, like a pre-algebra class and maybe some math labs, and maybe look into a school-wide behavior matrix. And so I took that as, okay, I mean, someone's feeling frustrated, and those are legitimate concerns and legitimate requests. Not that they have been made formally to us, but I was trying to find a positive in that interaction. And so if we could look into things of that nature, sure. What was asked for was math placement exams. Specifically, another one was ditching IM curriculum, and I'm not sure what that means. Okay. Adding supports such as pre-algebra class and math labs, And then some sort of school-wide behavior matrix so teachers can focus more on education and less on behaviors. So I'm sorry if that came out inappropriate at all, but I just, like I said, it was an unpleasant conversation. And since I was kind of dragged into it, I felt as though I should try to find a positive at the end of it. So there's that.
Would improving math proficiency and math curriculum be a fair general
Yeah,
topic
sure.
around that?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep. If our numbers, statistically, if our numbers are that low with our proficiency, then, we as a committee need to look into helping bring those numbers up.
Yeah.
That's our job.
Do you need any extra clarification on that right now? No. Okay. Member Hurd?
So just to piggyback, goodness gracious, I cannot talk this evening. To piggyback off what Member Bowden just said, I know there has been some talk at the federal level, state level about Department of Education and where that's going to land. Are they getting rid of it? Is it going back to local? Like where we fall on that? And so I didn't know if at some point you could kind of update us on what you know and what you've been told, and then what that would look like for our district, if it comes back to a local level. Just because we know, and again, I'm a broken record on this. What does that look like for a curriculum? So will we still be forced to do NUIA testing? Will we, does that change our curriculum at all? Does that give us some more freedom? Like just kind of overall, like what that would look like for our district.
Member Glant?
Just clarification on the news. I have heard the governor state concerning phone usage in schools. So I would like to know more about that. If it's, where it is and everything, so.
Councilor Herman?
Thank you. So I emailed about this as well, but it was just earlier today. Back in December, we had a student from Montello speak at public comment about policies around recess. And I just wondered if we could get an update if that issue had been looked into and if there's any change or any update on that we could get.
Great. Anything else? Okay. I might also just suggest that, and Member Jensen did suggest this earlier, of maybe whether it's our next meeting or soon after, because we have had quite a long list of agenda items, I think, and it has grown over time. Maybe we can spend a little time to try to map out the agenda a little bit, as much as is reasonable and possible, to at least see how we can realistically work through some of these things over what is ultimately a limited number of meetings, especially as we head into budget season, which will take a fair amount of time. So I just want to mention that. Hopefully we can figure out a way to do that. Okay. So with that, the next item on our agenda is to enter into executive session to discuss a personnel matter in accordance with 1 MRSA section 405(6)A. Is there
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. Motion by Member Hurd, seconded by Member Bowden. I guess we do still need to do roll call for this as well. So yeah, we'll start with Councilor Harriman.
Yes.
Yes.
Blant.
Yes.
Hurd, Hawkins.
Yes.
Member Harper.
Yes.
Member Eames.
Yes.
Member Bowden.
Yes.
Member Jensen.
Yes.
And I will also vote